So we saw an opportunity there to apply for that grant in hopes that we would be able to revitalize some of our outdated amenities here at Smith Hazel, continue what we've done with repurposing our pool area to a new facility to try to continue that plan forward. So we just received notice in October that we were awarded that grant, and so the city was able to secure additional funding because it is a match, it's a reimbursement program, and approved us to proceed with this project. And we've set aside $900,000 for the rehabilitation of this park.
It's total,
That's our total project amount.
federal and.
That is including the grant funds, okay?
Not
LWCF is federally funded, but it's administered by the state, okay? The unique thing about LWCF, not only is it only for outdoor recreation, it looks at the boundary of the property that you're putting your project, your funding towards. It looks at the boundaries of it. It sets in perpetuity that boundary of that property to always be outdoor rec. So as long as the city owns this property, the money that we spend in this park can only be for outdoor rec. We cannot come back later in 5 years and say we want to put a theater building on this, or we want to come back and put a residential house, or we want to come back and put a Dollar General. Can't do any of that. It locks this park and the perimeter of this facility in perpetuity for outdoor recreation, which is great for parks, recreation, and tourism. Okay, so we see that as a win. And the city saw that as a win many years ago because a lot of our parks have that stipulation on it. And the unique thing about Smith Hazel that I think is important as we start to look at these designs and talk about it a little bit more, back when this facility was developed and property boundaries were identified, maybe the technology wasn't that great back then because this building, in fact, probably the spot that I'm standing, is not city property. We bleed into DOT right away. And if you think about here on this direction, as you go down, it's Abbeville, right? It's it's one-way streets coming and going. But when you get there, you stop. If you were to go down that one-way street, you just come right through this park, right? So that kind of tells you where that boundary begins of city property versus DOT property. And again, this is common in Aiken, our farmers market, Charleston Street Park, Sumter Street Basketball Court. There's many facilities that bleed into or are built in DOT right away, which is fine. I'm sure the city has had agreements and had an understanding that that was happening at that time. But what it does do in terms of this grant, the grant will not fund a project in DOT right away. The grant is only going to give us funds for construction happening, outdoor recreation within the boundary of the property that the city owns. Okay? So, all that to say, the basketball court is one area that would not be eligible in our grant. Okay? However, we have gotten permission to still put a basketball court in with the grant funding. It just can't be in place that currently exists. Everything else based on their grant requirements is a one-for-one replacement. So we know our tennis courts have been closed for multiple years. They're not safe, and every time we put a patch on it, y'all hear that a lot, we're just gonna patch it temporarily, find a fix. It's never worked at this court, unfortunately. So we made a decision years ago, we just needed to close it to the public, quit throwing money at something that was gonna continue to crack and not function for us safely. So with the grant, we can clear it out, but we have to put it back, okay? We'll put it back and we'll build it right, and it'll be a usable court again, all right? The playground, we're clearing it out, but now we gotta put it back. So you're gonna get a new playground with new surfacing, new equipment, okay? Back in approximately the same spot that the other one currently exists, all right? And then again, basketball court, ideally, we would have wiped it out, and we would have put one right back there. But again, because of the land ownership issue, we've gotten the permission to relocate that basketball court within the park. We know that's a high priority need, it's utilized, and we're excited to be able to still add a court, okay, okay, 1-for-1. All right, so
Walking track.
walking track will get repaved, so that will be addressed. And then shelter, we had originally, again, in the grant said we were gonna replace the shelter with a new shelter. We have got permission to do that, but we are, hoping to keep the existing shelter because it has recently been refurbished with a roof. And so that is something else that they said, adding a second shelter met the scope of the grant, okay? So we're going to be able to do that as well, all right? What you see here, and again, I'm gonna give y'all an opportunity to come up here at the end and we can look at this in very good detail. This is what the grant covers, okay? Shows our existing, so this is the building, all right? This is the pool, shows existing basketball court right here. Playground shifts a little bit, so it brings it more centralized to all the other activities happening in the park. So if you're out there on the new basketball court or on the tennis, you've got a good view of that playground facility. There's the shelter that's gonna be added close between the pool and the playground. The basketball court, the 2 tennis courts that are already there will go back in the same spot. The shelter is there, and the walking trail may be reconfigured, but it will be repaved and provide that entire loop around the park as it currently does. Okay? Now, the reason it's so important for you all to be here and to provide us input on what you're seeing to my left and right is we don't want to stop with just what we currently have. Now, unless y'all tell me to. Y'all may say, Jessica, we don't want any additional. We like the pool, the shelter, the playground, the courts, the basketball, the track. That's all we want. We don't want anything else. And if you tell me that, then if that's the majority and that's what's reported, then we'll report that back to council.
Give the money back.
I have a feeling though that you want more for your park, okay? There's a lot of outdoor recreation things that can happen, amenities that can be added that can really, liven this space up. I want you to think about not only yourself, but future generations to come, your friends, your family, your children, grandchildren, and so forth, as we look at these. The idea is to go ahead and have a concept plan for future development for 2 reasons. One, it ensures that what we're doing here is not going to be disturbed, and in 5 years we're ripping this tennis court up again because now the community wants an ice skating rink there, right? Okay, so we're kind of locking this in and saying, how do we build around what we're about to spend $900,000 on? How do we do that smartly? How do we make sure the infrastructure that's going into this can buy into and play into the future of what this park brings? We have some opportunities in the future. We will have another round of LWCF grant money that we can apply for to do future phases. We may have some additional funds that the city identifies that comes in through revenue streams that the city can say, yes, we're ready to put this towards phase 2. We will have a CPST, Capital Project Sales Tax, voter referendum in 2024. That, if the community decides and city staff and city council that they want Smith Hazel Park to be part of that project, we can vote on that to happen and have money dedicated. That's how this building will be funded, or is being funded in the very near future to begin redevelopment here through CPSC. So having a plan now helps us as we plan for the future, and so that's what's important here. All right, very briefly, I'm going to talk about the differences in A and B. I'll probably move this out the way in a minute so we have room. The nice thing that both of these have that you see is parking, okay? So let me preface this by saying that the architect, Cranston, this was his concept looking at the space available, thinking what, in his experience of planning outdoor parks and rec, would fit nicely in the space, okay? A, it doesn't have to be A, it doesn't have to be B. It can be a combination, it can be something completely different. So keep open-mindedness as we go through these components, that this is just a proposal and it will change, okay, based on your feedback. Parking, however, I think is something I believe everyone would agree on is important, not only to serve the needs of the park, but the facility as well. When we have youth basketball, when we have family reunions here. We're about to turn this into a 5-day-a-week senior facility. We're programming 6 hours a day for seniors. We want them to have parking that's off the street, not having to walk as far. So parking you'll see is similar on both of these. Parking would kind of take over this existing basketball court. It's a good way to repurpose that space, okay?
Jessica, how
Yes.
many spaces are in each parking area
Oh,
that you have
let's go, you'll make me count.
designated? I'm sorry.
20, I would say up to 40, and that one's gonna be more.
We thought so.
That was, I would say double without counting. I'll count before the end of the meeting. So both have parking. One's a little bit different because this one has brought more shelters in place. Yes.
Could I ask you a question about
Yes.
park?
Mhm.
One of the, we have used that shelter there that's off of, something of that one.
Yes.
And the problem you have with the, existing parking along, Hampton Avenue, I think it's Hampton, right?
Yes, sir.
If you park there and you have stuff that you need to bring, you have to walk it up there.
Yes.
Or you violate the, rules of not parking on the grass, which I've done before, I admit it.
Right, in the park.
Yeah, so I
Yes, sir.
had suggested, that some consideration be made to putting some parking either off Sumter
Mhm.
or off of, what's the other street?
Hampton, Sumter,
Kershaw.
Abbeville, and Kershaw.
Yeah, Kershaw, yeah.
Okay. So and I'm glad you mentioned a comment now because that's important, but you all have at your seat a comment card and an option A or B, okay? And so go ahead and write that in on your comment card because that's how we're gonna capture it. But at the end of the meeting, you'll turn those in. You'll circle A or B. If you don't like either, you don't have to circle either. If you like them both, circle them both. But give some explanation in the comments as to what you're doing and why, or if you want to see something change. And if you love one, then how it is, then circle that, okay? So if you need more more space to write, we can give you a second comment card. We'll staple it to your first so that information stays together.
So what do you see as the big difference between A and B?
Yes, so I want to go through all of those, and I'm going to talk to you about my thoughts on Sumter Street as well in a little bit. We'll circle back to it. The big difference here in A and B, here we've got 2 more shelters near the pool, okay? So it's adding 3 shelters right in proximity to the pool and playground. This one does not. It adds 2 more at the pool, but they're on this side they're on the building side of the pool. So you're still gonna have 3 shelters, all right? Option B gives you 2 at the playground, 2 at the pool. Option A just gives you 3 kind of shared between the 2 spots within the park. All right, so that's one difference, is shelters, okay? The second difference is the number of basketball courts versus other outdoor courts. Pickleball being specific here on B. So option A, we know we're gonna have this existing court that's about to be built. It adds 4 additional for a total of 5 basketball courts. Option B gives you your existing with 2 additional for a total of 3 basketball courts and 4 outdoor designated pickleball courts. Okay?
No
Yes.
pickleball over here?
No pickleball in A. So where you would have 2 basketball courts, in lieu of, you've got 4 pickleball courts. The additional, yep,
How many basketball courts over there?
3 total. 3 total.
And additional pickleball courts?
Yes.
There that you don't have pickleball?
No pickleball on A.
Okay.
Okay? The other difference is it removes the shelter up top. So in A, you still keep that gazebo style shelter, what I call a gazebo shelter. It adds a 3rd tennis court. Now, I can tell you pros and cons, if you're interested in knowing, of why B was designed the way it is that with tennis, whenever there's tournaments in the area, they have to have a bank of 3 in order to utilize that space with the tournament. And so it could be utilized as a alternative space when the HODO Weeks Tennis Center has tournaments. If they've outgrown, if they bring in more tournament participants, tennis players, than what that space, then we can also schedule games at this site if it were to have 3 tennis courts. They won't come here if there's only 2 tennis courts. That doesn't meet their scheduling need, okay? Pickleball is certainly growing in our community, and it's growing with the youth in our community, which is exciting. I do see having been talking to some of our pickleball leadership, that they've got pickleball in some of our private schools right now, and I think they've reached out to the public schools. So again, thinking further down the road, pickleball could be a sport that our youth are playing, and they may need practice space, because I don't know of a school that currently has a pickleball court. Okay, so we often in Parks, Recreation, and Tourism meet the needs of the schools. We provide the tennis courts for both South Aiken and Aiken High. They don't have tennis courts at their facilities, they use ours. We provide cross-country course for Aiken High. So those are things that we can see partnering with the school if need be, if we have the space to do it, okay? Some other kind of unique features you'll see on both: outdoor fitness. So if you utilize outdoor fitness at Oda Weeks, Virginia Acres Park, you'll see that listed here. This has a cafe style seating, so some outdoor dining near the building. This one has more of an outdoor game area. So think of lawn games. Maybe it's horseshoes, maybe it's cornhole, maybe it's, I don't know, shuffleboard, something of the sort, outdoor lawn, checkers, chess. Doesn't really specify what the game is, but there would be green space dedicated to that type of play. And both of them have something that was very unique that we don't have currently in any of our parks, that the designer came up with, called a hammock garden, which is basically posts that if you own a hammock, you would be able to attach it to these posts and kind of just leisurely relax in the park and enjoy the breeze and enjoy the sun and enjoy the day. So I've seen that at Langley Pond, which is not our park, that's a county park. But if you go to Langley Pond, you will see these posts in the ground down near their beach area, and that is what that is. It's a hammock park. Keeps your trees safe by putting the posts in, and still gives that same, opportunity to be utilized in our parks. And then the other unique thing on this one, it has what they're calling an outdoor classroom. What I see it is mostly green space that I would believe would be kind of on a sloped area, so that if you're trying to do an educational with youth or anyone, it's a nice dedicated space where everyone can kind of see and hear and talk. So you're going to see that over here in A. All right?
Jessica,
Yes.
can I just ask? It looks like there's more parking, at least in the bottom left on this one than that.
Right.
Is that true?
Yes, this B is definitely more parking. So again, as you're writing your comments, you may like A, but you want the parking in D, right? You may like something in D, but you wanted, the cafe dining in A. So that's where it's gonna get a little bit of, if you want to piecemeal this, we're certainly, wanna hear that. These aren't set, these are just trying to spark some ideas, some creative thinking about what would fit within the current space.
Where on A is the outdoor classroom part?
Here,
Okay,
now,
and so it's not available on B?
it is currently not available on B.
What is in that spot on B?
That would be the
Oh,
handbag
that's already
garden
on
on
B,
B.
okay.
Right.
Gotcha.
You may decide that you kind of like open green space as well, and so you may say, we don't want anything in that area in particular. Somebody wants to go out there and throw a football or toss a frisbee.
Jessica, I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Actually, what's going to be paid for with the 900,000 is phase one?
Yes,
Okay, so all of that other stuff is down the road.
it is down the road.
Okay.
But it's important for us to try to identify and let Cranston engineers know kind of the thought process moving forward, because it could change the way maybe some of these sidewalks are configured.
Mhm.
I don't know that, obviously, I think this is in the layout that's most conducive
Yeah.
to where things are currently existing. But I do know in terms of that infrastructure, they don't want to be moving a lot of dirt
Yeah.
unnecessarily.
But phase one is the same in both of them?
Correct.
Okay,
Because
so
again-
really, we're looking at phase two down the road to vote on?
Correct.
Okay,
And so what you'll see in the non-filled in circles, the white circles, that depicts phase one on both of these, okay? What future phases are gonna be your darker black and red circles, that's what will be open to change. But yeah, we do not want to, again, come back and have to tear out.
Oh,
that
yeah, I
piece
just wanted to be-
or tear out something.
I had misunderstood, because I thought phase one there was kind of like a set of ideas for phase one, or, two sets of ideas we'll
Yeah,
be
again,
voting on.
because of the
But we're-
grant that we applied for and where that funding's come from,
Yeah.
it's a one-for-one replacement. And,
Do you know,
we've got it, we're kind of need to move forward on getting that there ready. Like I said, he's got this prepared. It should go out to bid very soon. I mean, our hope is first quarter that you'll start to see earthwork happening out there.
how far down the road might, the phase 2 come into play?
I think we certainly can look at the same amount, the same grant, applying for that for 2023. So we would know in October 2023, which would put us on a 2024 cycle. So there is one opportunity there. If we wait till that capital project sales tax, that won't be voted on until 2024. And just to give you a little bit of information on how that pot of funding works, it's collections. It has to come in before we can spend it. So that's why it's kind of like a 5-year cycle. It's because it takes time for that funding to be raised through the taxes before council and city management gives us the direction to then spend it on the project. So the project's approved, but it doesn't mean we can immediately move forward. So that one would take a little bit more time if we use that resource as a pot of money. If the city identifies other resources and funds, then if they tell us that funding's available, we'll move forward. But we're really at the mercy of being directed on that.
Last
Grant that
question.
The grant that you have now, what portion of phase 2 would that cover?
So the grant is only going to cover phase 1.
You know what I'm saying, for the next,
So if we were to reapply for the grant for phase 2, again, we can't do the parking because that parking, majority of it is gonna be outside of the boundary. But I do think everything else, I wanna say this black line may be, the boundary, if I'm not mistaken, but I would, to give you 100% accuracy, I'd have to pull that map and actually look at it. Joy Lester she's the one that actively was involved in that grant. So it is limited. I don't think we'd be able to reach outside the scope of that black line in terms of that grant fund.
Is the swimming pool part of not highway department property, city property?
Swimming pool is city property.
Is things like having adequate funding to, like, maybe pay a higher salary for lifeguards so that there could be lifeguards? Is there any possibility of any of that being folded into present or future?
So that would be part of just our operating budget discussions,
Yeah,
not necessarily
okay.
grant
Okay.
projects or capital project funds. But yes, I can tell you that my staff are working on proposals for the summer in terms of staffing and how to alleviate some of the.
I've had a grandmother and a mother call me with very specific and big concerns about that. So anyway, but
Yeah,
back to this, I'm sorry.
unrelated to this,
Yeah,
but,
gotcha.
I'll just take that to say, the community are our eyes and ears, and we appreciate the feedback, good or bad, we need to hear. It's how we plan, it's how we adjust, it's how, these lessons learned, and we can only improve if we know what to improve upon.
Thank
So
you
I
for your
don't take any
explanation.
offense by bringing recommendations to us in terms of something that you feel needs to change.
when the federal funds come through the state and so
Yes.
forth, are there any set aside requirements to those federal funds?
Right. So again, the funding is in perpetuity for outdoor recreation, so that's the requirement. If we were to ever sell this property, there's an entire conversion process.
Yeah.
Or if we were to build something non-outdoor related on this property, it's like an exponential exponent times the amount of square footage. So let's say an acre, you're gonna have to buy 10 acres, and it's even probably more than that. Of city property.
I was referring more to the bricks and mortar construction.
Cannot do any brick and mortar, it's all outdoor amenities. So the outdoor rec,
Outdoor rec,
the
are there
grant
any
gets approved.
requirements of the federal money to have set asides for minority contractors?
No, I'm not aware that this has any stipulations. The procurement, we have to follow state procurement. So,
Even with federal funds?
yes, because the way this is, it's federal funded provided to the state for set aside dedicated for land and water conservation. And we go through the National Park Service is part of that board that votes on the grant funding. So that's a federal agency, the National NPS, National Park Service. So they've got plans that we kind of have to follow within their guidelines with the National Park Service. But I'm not point that there's any stipulation on contractors or vendors or anything. Now, I can certainly, again, defer you to Joy Lester, because she is the grants administrator, and she is the liaison with the, state in terms of this grant, so if I find different, yeah, I will certainly ask her that and see if we can get you a little bit more specifics, but I am not aware that there's any stipulation outside of just following normal state procurement for this funding. So, I think what I would love to do is to have you all come up as you would like and look at these a little bit closer. I'm